Hello and welcome to one and all. In today's class, I will explain to you the next important LAQ from Unit 4, the law of returns to scale. LAQ 5, the question is explain the law of returns to scale. So this is also one of the very frequently asked board exam question. Okay, and before proceed with the answer, let me briefly explain to you what is the meaning of law of returns to scale and what are all the differences between the law of variable proportions and the law of returns to scale. Okay, so the brief explanation of the law of returns to scale. So one thing you have to understand is that the law of returns to scale deals with long run production function. Okay, so the law of variable proportion deals with the short run production function, whereas the law of returns to scale deals with the long run production function. Now, when I say the long run, it is possible for the producer to change all the factors of production. You know that in the law of variable proportions, which is dealing with the short run production function, the producer can change only one or two factors. The other factors remain constant. But whereas in the long run, the producer can change all the factors of production. So in the long run, the producer can change all the factors of production. Can change production. Okay, so that is the second thing you have to understand. And then in the when I say long run, it is indirectly it is reflecting large scale production. So long run is always associated with large scale production. So the long run is associated with large scale production. See, every producer starts as a small scale producer in the short run, and if the business becomes profitable, the producer keeps on expanding his production, the producer keeps on expanding his or her business, and from being a small scale producer, the producer will become the large scale producer. So that will happen in the long run. And for your information, as far as the economics is concerned, it is long run or short run is not necessarily according to our calendar time period. Okay, it is not that 1 month is short run and 10 years is long run. It is not like that. If the producer is able to change only one or two factors even in 10 years or 15 years, that is still the short run. But if the producer is able to change all the factors even in 2 months, 3 months, or whatever it is, that happens to be long run. So it is not necessarily associated with the calendar period. If the producer is able to change all the factors of production, that is the long run. Okay, so the producer is why the producer is changing all the factors of production? Because he wants to keep on increasing his input, so that he will get more and more amount of profits. So as a small scale producer, if he is able to get more and more of profits, if he or she thinks that by expanding the business, he or she can get more and more amount of returns, more and more amount of profit, the producer will think of increasing all the inputs. So long run is associated with large scale production, and there are always certain advantages of large scale production. So there are certain advantages of production. So meaning what? A large scale producer is getting certain advantages which is not available to a small scale producer. By expanding the business, the producer is getting more and more amount of profit, more amount of returns compared to his cost. So that's why the producer keeps on expanding his or her business. So there are certain advantages of large scale production which result in increasing returns. So which increasing returns. So when I say increasing returns, that means what? If the producer, how the producer can increase the output only by increasing the input. When the producer increases the inputs, his or her cost is increasing. But when the output increases, the producer's revenue is increasing. If the increase in revenue is more than the increase in cost of production, the producer is getting increasing returns. So those increasing returns are due to the advantages of large scale production. So this is only up to a certain limit. So only up to a certain limit. So certain level of expansion, the producer gets the increasing return, but later the producer still keeps on expanding the business. Later the producer will experience the disadvantages of large scale production. Experience of large scale production. So what will happen if the producer experiences the disadvantages of large scale production? The producer will start getting the decreasing returns, resulting in decreasing returns. Okay, so this is what happens when the producer operates on a large scale. So in other words, since the law of returns to scale is dealing with the long run production function, in other words, if the producer keeps on expanding the business by changing all the factors in constant proportion. See, in the law of variable proportion, the producer is changing only one or two factors in varying proportion. But whereas in the law of returns to scale, the producer is changing all the factors in constant proportions. Then the producer comes across three stages. Okay, so in the long run, all the factors of production in constant proportions. Okay, the producer comes across three stages. Just like law of variable proportion, here also the producer comes across the three stages, but what are all the stages? That varies. Okay, so now the first stage is increasing returns. So what is the meaning of increasing returns? The increase in output is more than the increase in input. So that is the first stage. When the producer keeps on increasing the inputs in the initial stages, the increase in output will be more than the increase in input. So that is stage 1, increasing returns. So stage 1, which is increasing returns, the meaning of increasing returns is when the producer increases the input to increase the output will increase more than proportionate to the increase in output. So that means what? Increasing returns will increase more than proportionately. The output will increase more than proportionate to the increase in input. So if the producer output increases more than proportionate to increase in input, means what? The revenue of the producer is more than the cost of production. See, for example, that is If the producer increases the inputs by 2 times, the output will increase by more than 2 times. That is, okay. So this is the stage of increasing returns which the producer is coming across in the initial stages. So now, since the producer output is increasing more than corresponding increase in the inputs, that means what the producer is revenue is increasing more than corresponding to the cost of production, the producer will be interested, enthusiastic to keep on expanding his business. So when he keeps on expanding the business, slowly the returns start to decrease. So then he will move on to the stage 2. Stage 2 is the constant returns. So the constant returns mean when the inputs are increased by 2 times, the output will also increase by 2 times. So this is what Marshall called as the advantages of large scale production is balanced out with the disadvantages of large scale production. So this is kind of no profit no loss stages. Okay, how much ever increase in the cost, that equal amount the revenue is also increasing. If the producer increases the inputs by 2 times, the output will also increase by 2 times. So that is the stage of constant returns. Okay, so this is entering into the stage 2. When the producer the output will also increase in the same proportionate level. The same proportion to the increase in inputs. So that is when the producer increases the inputs by 2 times, the output will also increase by 2 times. Okay. So they both will balance with each other. So the producer is entering the stage of no profit, no loss stage. Okay. Then still if the producer keeps on increasing, expanding his business, then he enters to the third stage of production, that is stage 3, decreasing returns. So the decreasing returns means what? When the producer increases the inputs, the output will increase by less than proportionate increase in the input. That is what? If the producer increases the inputs by 2 times, the output will increase by less than 2 times. Now slowly the disadvantages of large scale production will happen. Initially, if the producer is getting increasing returns because of the advantages of large scale production, and when the producer slowly starts getting the constant returns and decreasing returns, the disadvantages of large scale production will creep in. So slowly the returns will start to decrease. So he is entering into stage 3. Okay, so you can give the example. If the producer increases the inputs by 2 times, the output will increase by less than 2 times. Okay, so this is what the law of returns to scale is trying to specify. Okay, and at which point of time the producer should stop the production. So now the reasons for increasing returns, as I mentioned, increasing returns to scale is happening because the producer is getting certain advantages of large scale production, and the producer is coming across the decreasing returns because of the disadvantages of large scale production. So if the producer keeps on expanding the business too much, then the supervision, control, shortage of raw materials, all those will happen. Initially, because of the expansion of business, the producer will come across certain advantages, like he is using the better machinery, he is using the division of labor, and the worker, he is using the trained and skilled staff members, and the machinery is used to its full capacity, so the average cost of production decreases. So all this will happen in the initial stages. But if the producer keeps on expanding the business, supervision, control will become difficult. There will be shortage of raw material, shortage of labor force, shortage of skilled labor force. So because of all these things, the cost of production will increase. So the producer will have to face the decreasing returns to stage. So increasing returns due to advantages of large scale production, decreasing returns due to disadvantages of large scale production. Okay, now this is what the law of returns to scale is trying to explain, illustrate with the help of a table and diagram. Now let's move on to the actual answer. So the question is, explain the law of returns to scale. Introduction. The law of returns to scale explains the input output relation in the long run. It is also called as the long run production function. Okay, then the next one, the statement of the law. The law states that if a producer increases her output by increasing all the inputs in constant proportions, the output will initially increase in increasing returns, then in constant returns, and finally in decreasing returns. And then you have the assumptions on which the law is based. First assumption, all inputs except producer are variable. So we keep saying that all inputs are variable. You cannot change the producer, isn't it? So except the producer, all the inputs are variable. Second one, state of technology remains constant. Actually, in the long run, the technology can also change. This is only for the illustration. For the example, we are assuming the technology is remaining constant. And the third assumption, there is perfect competition in the market. See, the perfect competition, now you must have known that almost in all the laws, the economists, they assume perfect competition. This is for the sake of simplicity. For the perfect competition is there in the market means, then there will not be any changes in the prices of the commodities. There will not be any changes in the prices of the factors of production. The units of factors will be homogeneous. For all those reasons, for the sake of simplicity, the economists, they always assume perfect competition whenever they are framing the law. Okay. Then the fourth assumption is production is measured in physical units. Okay, it is not in monetary unit. This is measured in physical units. And then fifth one, a worker works with the given tools and implements. That's why we are assuming state of technology is constant. with the given tools and implements, a set of tools is provided to the worker to work with. So how in the worker, if with the given set of tools and implements, how the production changes. That's what we are illustrating through the law. Then coming to the explanation of the law can be explained with the help of a table and a diagram. Two factors, namely capital and labor, are taken for simple analysis. So we are assuming two factors, capital and labor. The producer keeps on increasing in constant proportions. So when the producer keeps on increasing the constant proportion, this capital and labor, let us check out how the total returns and the marginal returns keep changing. Okay. So you have the table returns to scale. First column, changes in scale, that is factor units, capital plus labor. Second column, total returns. Third column, marginal returns. And fourth column, stages. Okay. So you can see that the first instance, the producer is using 1 unit of capital and 10 units of labor. So the total returns happens to be 9 units and the marginal returns also happens to be 9. Okay. And you can see that the second level, the producer is increasing the capital by 1 unit, doubling the capital. So from 1 unit of capital, it is becoming 2 units of capital and 20 units of labor, doubled. So what you are finding in the total returns has increased to 19. So if it is doubled, the total return should have been only 18, but the total returns has increased more than proportionately, that is increasing returns. So the total returns has become 19. So you can see even the marginal returns has increased from 9 to 10. So this is stage 1. The producer is coming across the increasing returns. Then you can see that further increase in the input of labor and capital. You can see between 3 units of capital and 30 units of labor and 4 units of capital and 40 units of labor. So what happens? The total returns has increased from 19 to 30 and 30 to 41. Okay. So when you check the marginal returns, you can see it remains constant at 11. I think you can remember how you have to calculate the marginal returns. 19 minus 9, 10. 30 minus 19, 11. 41 minus 30, again it is 11. So you can see that the marginal returns remains constant at 11. Okay. So that indicates the producer has entered the second stage of production, that is the constant returns. And still you can see the last two cases, still the producer increases the inputs of labor and capital between 5 units of capital and 50 units of labor and 6 units of capital and 60 units of labor. You can see that the total returns 51 and 60. When you check the marginal returns, you can see that it has decreased from 11 to 10 and 10 to 9. Okay. So the marginal returns exactly tells us the producer has entered the third stage of production, that is decreasing returns. Okay. So now this is again the hypothetical table, and the same thing you have to explain in the form of words. So the next heading should be explanation of the table. From the above table, we can observe that if the producer increases the labor and capital in constant proportions, you can see that the producer is increasing in constant proportion. The capital is continuously being increased by 1 unit and labor is continuously being increased by 10 units. That's why it is a constant proportion. She comes across 3 stages of production. So what is happening? In stage 1, increasing returns. In this stage, when the producer increases the inputs by 2 times, the output increases by more than 2 times. Marginal product increases from 9 to 10 units, indicating increasing returns to scale. Okay. Then moving to stage 2, constant returns. In the next stage, when the inputs are increased further, the marginal product remains the same at 11 units. So this indicates constant returns to scale. Okay. Then stage 3, decreasing returns. A further increase in inputs, capital and labor result in marginal product declining from 10 units to 9 units. That is decreasing returns to scale. So all this you are mentioning it the next part of the answer. Then you have to mention in the form of a diagram. So diagrammatic representation, First x-axis and y-axis. X-axis you are representing the scale of production, and y-axis we are representing only the marginal returns. We are not representing the total returns, we are representing only the marginal returns. So see, first A to B, this is the dotted lines I am mentioning to you. So A to B, initially the marginal output is increasing from 9 units to 11 units, isn't it? Then it remains constant at 11 units, that is B to C, constant returns to scale. Then again it is decreasing to 9 units, that is decreasing returns to scale. So this is the marginal return. So A to B, increasing returns, B to C, constant returns, and C to D, decreasing returns. So this is how you are representing in the form of a diagram. Okay. Now next you have to explain the diagram also in birds. So in the above diagram, A to B denotes increasing returns to scale, that is stage 1. B to C denotes constant returns to scale, stage 2. And C to D denotes decreasing returns to scale, stage 3. Now you can see the difference in the law of variable proportion. The 3 stages are increasing returns, decreasing returns, and negative returns. But whereas in law of returns to scale, the 3 stages happen to be increasing returns, constant returns, and decreasing returns. Because the producer is operating on the long run on a large scale, the producer is able to postpone the negative returns, postpone the decreasing returns. That's why in between we are having the constant returns and then the decreasing returns. So since he is operating on a large scale on a long run, he can postpone continuously for a long period of time the negative returns compared to a small scale producer who is operating on the short run. Okay. Now finally we are concluding with what are all the causes for increasing returns and decreasing returns. So what are all the causes of increasing returns? In the initial stages, the producer gets increasing returns due to the advantages of large scale production. Okay, like division of labor, the producer can divide the work and allot the work to different efficient workers. So the time will be saved, the quality will also be good. Okay, and better use of machinery, the producer will be able to use the machinery to its maximum capacity. So if the machinery is used to the maximum capacity, then the average cost of production will decrease, and which are indivisible. Machinery cannot be cut. If the production of the company is lesser, you cannot actually cut the machinery. If the machinery has the capacity to produce 1000 units, the company has to produce the 1000 units. If the company produces only 500 units, then what happens? The average cost of production will increase. You cannot cut the machinery for the sake of production of 500 units. So if the production is can be done by the machinery up to 1000 units, the producer on a large scale, he will operate the machinery to produce the 1000 units. So the cost will be spread over 1000 units. So that means what? The average cost of production will decrease. So all this will lead to decrease in the cost of production and increase in the revenue. That's why the producer is getting the increasing returns. And still if he keeps on expanding, he will enter the decreasing return. That is causes of decreasing returns. If the firm expands its production beyond its optimum size, that is maximum correct size, if the beyond the capacity, if the production is expanding, then it has to face the disadvantages of large scale production, such as shortage of raw materials and labor, rising cost of production, etc., leading to diminishing returns. Okay, so this is the answer for law of returns to scale, and this question can be asked both for 5 marks as well as for 10 marks. Okay, so I hope you have clearly understood the answer. So if you have any doubts, please mention it in the comment box. If you like this video, if you find this video useful, please like, share, and also subscribe. And until my next class, take care. Bye bye.